Disclaimer.
This channel does not promote or encourage any illegal activities. All contents provided by this channel is meant for educational purpose only.
What is an election? Election is a formal and systematic process of choosing someone to a government position or other post through a ballot. It is critical to recognize the distinction between election form and election substance. In certain circumstances, electoral materials are present, but the substance of an election is missing, such as when voters are unable to make free and informed choice between at least two options. Most countries hold election in some form or another, although many of them are not competitive or have highly compromised electoral circumstances in other ways.
On May 9, 2022, the Philippines will hold the next national election. The nation's citizens are given the power to vote for who they want to lead a nation for the next 6 years. All citizens 18 years old above that resides in the Philippines for 1 year immediately preceding the election are given the opportunity to vote once.
There has been a lot of talks about politics lately. Everyone has the right to express his or her opinion. Every citizen has the right to campaign for his or her chosen political candidate. Unfortunately, some use this right in an ethical way. Everyone ends up in attacking each other just to prove that their chosen candidate is better than the other one. After all, the human leaders that we look up to are merely humans. They are also sinners and have imperfections like us. But given this, there are things that we need to discuss in order to vote smarter in the coming election.
Ways to vote smarter this coming election.
First step to voting smarter is to register. So for obvious reasons, you're unable to vote if you haven't registered yet. It is important to take responsibility and register as early as you can. So for the voter registration should begin with the premise that all citizens who have reached the required age have the right to vote. Voter registration is intended to ensure that everyone entitled to vote can do so. This is to prevent ineligible persons from voting by the same individual. Of course, registering it to vote isn't enough. Taking the initiative to show up to vote on the designated day and making sure that the people you vote for are responsible and have the virtues that are aligned with yours. Remember, not choosing to vote is still voting. It is a vote of choosing to be ignorant and not choosing what future you want for your country.
Number 2. Vote matters. Each or a single vote has a huge impact on every candidate. A million votes cast in favor of a candidate could not reach this number without a single vote coming from one person. Filipinos should give importance to the democratic system which gave power on our hands to decide who to appoint as the leader of the country. As controversial as it is, a single vote truly matters and could lead to a greater change. We should not underestimate a single vote, for the possibilities in election are endless. Making a vote makes a person to be heard and have an opportunity to support a candidate that represents his views and advocacy. It is also important to bear in mind that voting is not only a right but also a responsibility. Thus, every person vote matters.
Do your homework. Election year is not time for cramming. Deciding a good candidate or a good leader is difficult. That's why we need to learn about the candidate's leadership abilities. How can you know if someone will be honest, open, or able to act under pressure if elected to the government? Here are some ways to read between the lines. Look at the candidate's background and their experience. How prepared are they for the job? Observe the candidate's campaigns. Do they give speeches to different groups? Do they accept invitations to the debate? Do campaigns emphasize media events where the candidates can be seen but not heard? Number 3. Review the campaign website, social media, content, and materials, and also the history of the candidate. As you watch a campaign develop, consider the information that provides insight into candidates' personalities and the leadership qualities. Number 4, seek the opinions of others in your community who are affected differently by decision of political leadership. Talk to people of diverse backgrounds and positions, such as a person of different taste than you, a teacher, a member of the business community, or a sexual or gender minority person to find out which candidate they support and why.
Our next thing to do as a registered voter is to separate fact from fiction. This is very crucial, especially now that we are in the midst of pandemic. There is a significant impact on the campaigning activities of the candidates. Some candidates will rely on social media platforms to reach out to voters than to hold in-person or traditional campaigning events. Every one of us know how convenient social media is. And other than that, it is also accessible means to create contents. Therefore, it has a huge probability that some of the information posted and shared on the other social media platforms will lead to misinformation due to lack of regulation and examination required before posting. And accessibility of social media is a prime platform in swaying public opinions. Consequently, the political actors, supporters, candidates will use it and will do anything just to capture the public attention. In order to avoid these things to happen, you need to do your tasks properly. You need to choose information wisely and evaluate it. Look for voices that you can trust. Don't believe in everything you read and hear. And always remember, verify, verify, verify.
Number 5, vote critically and vote wisely. In this election, it is important to do a research in every candidate we have. It is not about joining the trend or just because you are familiar, you have to vote them. In this generation, we need a potential leader who will help us. Voting is a method for a group such as electorate in order to make collective decisions or expresses an opinion, usually following debates, discussions, and election campaigns. And voting should be taken seriously because the future of every Filipino is depending on it. Choosing, voting, and voting wisely is an act of practical wisdom. If we choose a wise leader, they will help make the society wiser too.
Next, know the difference between promises and performance. Political promises attract a lot of attention in election campaigns, but their effects on voting remain largely unknown. Politicians keep promising change, but others don't really change anything, as some politicians run for their own way. It is so easy to make all kinds of promises during the campaign period. If it's like courtship, politicians will promise you the moon and the stars to get your vote. What you need to look is their track record. What have they actually done? Did they done anything? Don't immediately believe the promises. Check everything carefully to see if he or she has done anything for the people. Always remember to value your vote. Pay attention to the action, not to the words.
7. Ask yourself, what did they do during the pandemic? Did they actually do their part in trying to make people's lives better during a really difficult time? Or did they only focus on their campaign, going out and violating quarantine rules, putting other people's lives at risk? COVID-19 was a true test of leadership. How each candidate handled the pandemic tells us so much about them. So in choosing our presidential candidate, we must consider and ask ourselves, what have they done to help the people? Or did they help the people?
8. Utang na loob should never be the basis of your vote. By this point in an election year, you might find yourself overwhelmed by politics, the advertisement, the polls, the news coverage. With all the noise, it's easy for us to come up with excuses. Maybe, I can't get behind any of the candidates, or my vote doesn't even matter. Maybe those excuses are starting to sound pretty reasonable to you now. Here in the Philippines, there is the concept of utang na loob, which can be translated as debt of inside or debt of gratitude. Our only point here is that, like most other social norms, utang na loob fundamentally interacts with institutions and politics. On its own, it could be a positive behavioral pattern facilitating trust, cooperation, and exchange. But in the electoral and institutional world of the Philippines, it seems to produce some sort of perverse outcomes that reciprocity and produce vote buying networks. And if one wants to change politics in the Philippines, it makes sense to focus not on cultural change or not to practice utang na loob, but rather on institutional reform and political change. If we are concerned that's all about our country and its future, we must pay attention to the election and use our vote wisely. Remember, your vote can change our direction.
Number 9, forgive but never forget. You can be as forgiving as you want to be in all aspects of your life, but not when it comes to choosing your government officials. Filipinos can be too forgiving and too forgetful, and so politicians think they can keep making fools of us. The experience of others taught us that nations who do not deal with the past are haunted by it for generations. We recall our terrible past so that we can deal with it. Forgiving where forgiveness is necessary but not forgetting. Everyone deserves a second chance, but not every disgraced politician deserves re-election. So, we need to carefully choose of who we want to vote in order for us to have a better country.
Be prepared and calm. As a voters, what do you do during election? We all know that your vote has a big change. It means your vote is very important. So, here are some tips for you on what to do before and during election. Be prepared. Familiarize your candidate number. Second, bring a list of your candidates. Try to write the list of your candidates so you have nothing to be sorry if ever you forgot and you shaded the wrong candidates. Third, always make time to read and check your paper before passing it. And lastly, while voting or choosing your candidate, try to stay calm and easy. Do not panic. No one is trying to arrest you. Again, be calm and prepare during this coming election.
Always bring the questions. Why are you voting and for who are you voting for?
Do not forget it, because your vote, our vote, can potentially change our country on better or worse, depending on the decision that we will make during the election. Don't ever lose your vote. Make it count and choose the leader that is better and suitable one for the position.
We do hope that you have gained knowledge from us about voting for this coming election.
Don't forget to vote smarter.